Now, the front page of the Daily Telegraph goes with a story which, again, we were questioning at the time. Starmer hid £30 billion cost of the Chagos surrender. You might remember that Keir Starmer, when he said they were selling off the Chagos Islands, said that the suggestions that it was going to cost tens of billions of pounds were wildly inaccurate. Let's just remind ourselves of what he said.
This cost is part and parcel of using Britain's global reach to keep us safe at home. And it will be less than the cost of running one aircraft carrier for a year. Today's agreement is the only way to maintain the base in the long term.
Yeah, well, he's being accused of lying now, which, of course, we've accused him of doing many times. They don't like it in Downing Street when we say that. Unfortunately, it happens to be true because it now turns out the government's own estimate of the cost of giving away the British Indian Ocean Territory to Mauritius is almost £35 billion, according to documents released under the Freedom of Information Act, far higher than the £3.4 billion figure that Sir Keir previously used in public. Basically, Labour ministers are now facing claims that they misled Parliament and the public with an accountancy trick to hide the bill from the taxpayers. So I'm terribly sorry, Sir Keir Starmer, but once again, I'm afraid there is no other conclusion to draw that you were lied to the British public. And as Rafe Heidelman-Q said, surely this could be a resigning situation, shouldn't it? I mean, you can't just go around lying barefaced to the British public. Let's talk to Will Kingston, political commentator and host of the Fire at Will podcast. Will, very good morning to you.
G'day, Mike. Great to see you.
I mean, we've now got other politicians, and we had Kemi Badenoch in here the other day calling Keir Starmer a liar. I've had Richard Tice from Reform calling him a liar. Pretty much everybody in the public domain now realises that Keir Starmer tells lies, and he's been caught out telling yet another one, this time about flogging off the Chagos Islands.
Yeah, well, I can't see how you could come to any other conclusion, Mike. And here's the thing, which is at the heart of what is now a pattern of behaviour, and that is that obviously this Labor government, A, thinks that the public are idiots and can't trust them with particular types of information, like the Afghan scandal, for example, and B, they obviously know that what they're doing is going to be unpopular, which, you know, forgive me for being a bit naive, but I don't think that's particularly good politics. Like, why wouldn't they just go, look, we know that this is going to be unpopular, as opposed to lying to people about it? Why don't we actually change course beforehand, which means that therefore we may, you know, who knows, actually come up with better policy? Who would have thought that giving away islands and then paying money to give away islands wouldn't be popular with the public? That should be a message that you should change course. It should be a message to lie about it and then just hopefully try and make sure that it stays covered up.
Well, exactly right. And the trouble is that we now have to use these Freedom of Information Act applications to get the truth out of any, whether it be a politician or government department, because they're just literally spending most of their time desperately trying to keep us from knowing what it is that they're up to. I mean, to wit, take you all the way back to the Conservative government, taking out a super injunction, so we never found out they were smuggling in tens of thousands of Afghans from post the Taliban situation that they didn't want us to find out about.
Yeah, that's exactly right, which is why I say this is a pattern of behaviour with this government. And I think it is also part of this leftist instinct, and I'll include the previous Conservative government in leftist instinct, that they know best, that they're smarter than the average person, and as a result of that, A, they will be able to keep these things covered up, and B, this is the right thing to do, even if the plebs don't seem to agree with us. It is fundamentally anti-democratic. It goes to this sort of technocratic instinct which has taken hold of government. And is it any wonder, Mike, that we have now the Corbyn Party, Reform, which are challenging the major parties, because this has been the way that politics has run for far too long?
Yeah, exactly right. And people are not stupid either, because social media has meant that we can see what's going on before our very eyes. You know, somebody put out, you might remember, back end of, I think, the week before last, a picture or a video of a load of migrants being shipped into the Britannia Hotel in Canary Wharf under cover of darkness at 1 o'clock in the morning, all getting out of a coach and going into the hotel. You know, that gets published on social media, gets seen by millions of people. You know, if the government says, oh no, there's no migrants there, you go, well, sorry, we don't believe you. There's the video.
Yeah, the migrant boats as well, and the ratio of men to women is another good example. That story the other day we can see that 80 to 90% of these people on the boats are men, and yet you still have Labor politicians who will happily say that there are women and children on board. It's like they still think they're running politics in the 1990s. It's like they still think that, there is this kind of, that Blair is still Prime Minister, that kind of technocracy still works, and that there aren't cameras on everyone's phones. It really, really is odd. And this is an age where times have moved on and people are craving authenticity in their politicians. Yeah. It's why people like Farage, and yes, even people like Corbyn, are far more popular, because for better or worse, they see them as being authentic.
Well, that's right. But also, they see what's going on around them. One of the reasons that we're going to be speaking to Jamie McIver, a councillor from Essex, coming up next on the show, because he was out at a protest in Epping yesterday. People are seeing the protests going on. People are seeing that they're peaceful. People are seeing that, there are all sorts of communities up and down the country, from whether it be Essex down to Bournemouth, whether it be up to Newcastle in the northeast, whether it be up to Glasgow. Every single part of Britain has got one of these protests going on now, because that's where all the migrants are. Everybody can see them. Everybody knows where they are. The government is trying to conceal it. The government's trying to convince us that they've actually detained some people as well, but nobody really believes them.
Yeah, that's right. They no longer can control the narrative. But I go back to the theme of this conversation so far, and that is, if you can't control a narrative, or you can't keep spinning like you used to be able to spin in, for example, the Blair era, that is a sign to change course. It's not a sign to just keep trying to lie to the public or try to conceal information, because it doesn't work.
It really doesn't. Because, again, you can see from the stories going around this morning, 435 arrivals on Saturday alone, right? We're going to have a spell of really, really lovely weather this week, which is going to presumably mean that we're going to have thousands more people coming between now and next weekend, which is going to very comfortably take the numbers of migrants coming to the UK since Keir Starmer got in charge of being Prime Minister to more than 50,000.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Well, this is a story that we speak about every Monday morning, and I have to rack my brain to work out what I'm going to say that's new and interesting about this story, because if the government refuses to fix it, the story stays the same week after week. Now, the thing here is...
So I was just going to interrupt you. I'm just watching Sky News, which is showing what can only be described as a hell on Earth scenario. It looks like literally Armageddon. They've got like yellow and red swirls going around Europe as if the whole place is on fire. Sorry, it's just a weather report, you know what I mean? Sorry, you carry on.
It's one of my it is one of my favourite. I love the climate change alarmism and the cheap tricks that the media plays to try and make people scared. But I also do like, as a guest in the United Kingdom, one of the great media tropes, which is the 30-degree heat wave, and how every single media organisation, apart from the sensible ones like TalkTV, of course, talks about how there is catastrophe looming. Right. Whenever there's a bit of nice sun. I personally think that global warming will be one of the great things for the United Kingdom. I don't know why we're complaining.
I know. Well, you come from a hot country. I mean, I'm sure that whenever it gets a bit warm there, you don't get. Well, maybe you do. I don't know. But surely they don't do all that red nonsense and the buildings on fire. Wildfires everywhere. It's just mad.
Yeah. No. We said that don't get worried about 30-degree heat.
Exactly. You were talking about the whole migrant situation, but every day, right? Just when you think that there isn't anything else you can talk about, there is something you can talk about, because we've got the Sun page one today, in which they're saying that all these asylum seekers are getting perks like you wouldn't believe, including dinghy days out. You'd think they've had enough of dinghies, by the time they've got here, but they're getting free cinema tickets, they're getting discounted massages, they're getting Lime bikes to drive around on. As somebody said, Rafe Heidelmann-Koo was here earlier, they're actually providing them with the bike on which to come up behind you and steal your phone. It's great, brilliant, fantastic.
Yeah, that's right. The dinghy one, I shouldn't be laughing, but you can't help but laugh, because it's almost beyond parody at this point how stupid it is. It goes back to the fundamental point, Mike, that we have made in the past, and that is that if you keep creating incentives for people to come, they are going to keep coming. And these are yet more incentives. When you think about the really simple steps that you need to stop the boats, step one is stopping the incentives to coming, and step B is saying that if you do try to turn up by a boat, you will never ever stay in this country. Now, they're both relatively simple things to do.
You would think.
I just can't understand why the government doesn't do it, and which is why, again, I think with all of the policies that they are announcing on the boats issue, they're all tinkering around the edges. And as a result of that, they're never going to make change because they're unwilling to do the fundamental things that you need to do to stop the boats.
But the problem, again, is that basically nothing really works. The system is broken, and I'm not just talking about the asylum system. I'm talking about almost every system of government, almost every lever that they want to pull or they want to do to change the way things are. They pull it, and then nothing happens because the whole system has kind of fallen over, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I was reflecting on this before coming on. It goes to one of the other stories in the paper this morning, which is about the 150-odd thousand people on care visas where we no longer know where they are in the country or what their status is. And that is when, you know, Reform eventually gets into government, if they do, if the polls continue to stay as they are, the first step will be a complete and total review of all the different government departments and a clean out of the dud talent and the ideologically biased people that are just preventing change from happening. So before you even think about boats policy, before you think about economic growth, before you think about the NHS, there are people in each of these respective departments who are either too useless to do basic things like looking at where people are on visas or too ideologically biased to stop people from coming on dinghies. That's going to have to be the first step in any new government, or else all the great ideas that they have will all come to naught.
Yeah, I think that's right. And there really is no place for them to go. On the front page of the Express, I mean, we've got a reform a councillor coming in shortly, but entire streets, according to some reform council chiefs, are being lined up to accommodate asylum seekers in the UK. 12 different individuals have told this to the Home Office, basically, saying that they're sort of hoovering up communities in Dover, Thanet, Canterbury and Folkestone in Kent, reportedly hit the hardest, you know, because at the end of the day, there's a £500 million sort of loot fund, if you like, for a more sustainable accommodation model as they try and get people out of hotels and into these single occupancy or multiple occupancy homes.
Yeah, this is yes minister level satirical nonsense. It's like the people who have crafted this policy and they've heard, oh, people are really upset about these migrant hotels, so let's move them out of migrant hotels and put them in houses, as if it is the structure or the nature of the architecture that's the problem. That's not the issue. The issue is that we're paying money to house people who should not be in the country. I don't care if they're in a hotel or a house. It's the same basic issue. In fact, it's arguably worse if they're put in a house because they're going to be even more embedded in the community.
Exactly.
They're going to be less, it's going to be harder to pick up where exactly they are. So this isn't again, it's just a classic kind of government response to be seen to be doing something, even though they are not willing to actually grasp the fundamental problem.
Exactly right. Will, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed. Will Kingston, political commentator and host of the Fire at Will podcast.